waste of time for the people of the state of Oklahoma. We have been transparent in everything that we do, both with the public, with the legislature, and with districts. I promised the people of Oklahoma I would hold taxpayer funds accountable. That's what we've done in this agency, time and time again. It's unfortunate that lies perpetuated by the media, by the teachers union, and some bad actors have us here again today. Again, we just finished a loft investigation. Now we're right back talking about the same things. So happy to clear these up once again. First of all, I'm listing the law, say some and many in all of these districts with all of these concerns. I'd like to step back into what you heard at the very beginning of this presentation. How many schools they talked to. When their survey went out, 67% of districts issued no response. 67% of districts have no issue. So much so that they didn't even respond to the survey. But then let's go to the people who did respond. 82% of those who did respond had no issues with their title funds and notifications. This is not a broad problem. This is not a broad issue. But let's talk about communication. We have a listserv service where we provide emails to all the districts in the state. There's 7,000 people on that email list, of which we deliver updates on a weekly basis. I cannot make them open their emails. If they have so little concern over their federal funding that they did choose to open the weekly emails, where we explain the new process we were putting in place because of billions of dollars of claims that were fraudulently spent to our agency, they should have read their emails. If they didn't attend the bi-weekly meetings where we have an open Zoom with anyone who wanted to attend from the district, superintendents, district superintendents, federal programs officers, to hear further explanation of how the new system would work, why we were doing it. And again, the explanation that we provide on a weekly basis, which is the faster you get in your claims, is the faster we can turn them around. After telling districts we asked them to get in their first claims by November 1st, over 100 of them waited till the beginning of the year to issue their first claims. These are things that slow down the process. So again, we can communicate these things, and of course, frankly, law of some data supports it. 66% of districts has such little problem they didn't respond to the survey, and the ones who responded, 82% had no issues. So again, we will hold bad actors accountable. We will hold individuals accountable for their fraudulent claims on how they're spending federal funds. I'll give you one example. Got a district that wanted us to give them federal funds so they could renovate a fourplex so students could hang out in there as they saw fit. It just turned out that superintendent happened to own that fourplex that he wanted us to spend federal funds on to refurbish. These are the type of claims, I've got a list here and don't worry with it. We got a list here of claims like this from districts. That is exactly why we assure that every single claim goes through a process. And when we found that there were multiple issues in this process where claims were making it through in the past that should have been flagged earlier, we changed the process and we communicated that clearly to districts. You hear a lot of talk about delays and when districts are getting their funds. I will note, mentions this along the board as well. There's only one state in our bordering states to get these claims out faster than we did. Well, now you're not hearing that in the media. You're not going to hear that focused on very much, I would imagine. We get them out faster than Texas, faster than Arkansas, faster than Tennessee, faster than Colorado, faster than all these states. So in one state, we don't get them out faster than that's Kansas. And again, the reason why Kansas is able to get their claims out faster is they have a significant smaller amount of charter schools. As we pointed out in the Loft report, the federal government required you to recalculate for how many students are in charter schools. Charter schools are a very fast-growing school system, so it's very tough to calculate those numbers till you have those enrollment numbers from the districts. Kansas has a dramatically smaller amount of private school students, maybe about 43,000. I believe Kansas has just a few thousand. 2,300 in their charter schools. It's very important for us to get these numbers right. And you hear them talk about every year they got their allocations this early. That's just incorrect. We pointed out, and it's in their documentation, one time in the past 6 years have districts gotten preliminary allocations as early as April and March. And that year, we found many issues in calculations. I want to ensure that our districts know the amount of money they're gonna get. I wanna make sure those numbers are correct. And I wanna make sure that we have the ability to look through everything that's being spent inside our school districts. Heard about a miscalculation error. There was a miscalculation error. The federal government gave us a chart that once we were notified was incorrect. We corrected it swiftly to get districts again their accurate documentation. As we stated in a law committee that just ended a couple months ago, we work hand in hand to ensure that these dollars are spent in the means that they are. If there's a mistake on the end of the federal government, we will work to correct it, as we did, as we notified districts more. That's all I've got for comment on this.
Thank you. I did applaud you to make sure that there is no fraud, waste, federal or state dollars. At this point, is there questions of the finding from the members? Representative Bowman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could, I had two questions. I was a little surprised to hear on the response to the survey that went out, that, you know, kind of tongue in cheek, 32% of our superintendents did homework, but what was the time frame on that they had? Was it in a busy period? Was it a short time frame? How long did they have, and when was the time frame to get those results back?
Thank you for your question. The survey went out in September. It was open for about 3 weeks for superintendents to respond to.
So it was the schools, okay.
You're recognized for all.
And you put up a chart, and in my hand, it's exhibit 3 on page 12, but it's the summary of the time. And it kind of jumped off the chart that odd number of years are significantly shorter than even number of years, almost double on even number of years consistently since 2019. Is there something different in the process on odd number versus even number of years, or is that just an anomaly?
Thank you for your question. We didn't find a reason that would be in our analysis. Could we throw that to SDEs?
Yes.
Representative Bowman, I'm unaware of any, there's no difference. I would just be depending upon variables every year. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Representative Provenzano, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is for the State Department of Education and the Superintendent. On page 6, the chart at the bottom, where is federal programs in that organizational chart?
It's under academic affairs.
Thank you. At this time, can I request that districts be given an explanation moving forward on the divisions within the State Department of Education, because a lot of the feedback I'm getting is they don't recall and it's unclear who's in charge of what. And so if we could just get a more detailed organizational chart from the State Department of Education. And then follow up.
You're recognized for follow-up. The request for more detailed org chart has been noted.
And then this question is for the State Department of Education regarding federal funding. According to the United States Department of Education's audit on July 25th, policies and procedures to avoid lack of oversight should already be in place. What's the expected timeline now for that, based on that report?
Those procedures are in place.
Thank you. When were they put in place?
Excuse me?
When were they put in place? If they were absent on the July 25th report, what they put in place?
The July 25th report is the result of a year-long program review. We had a site visit in December of 2024, and we were in the process of putting those in place. The multi-tier review system that has been mentioned before is the biggest part of that process, the review process.
You're recognized for follow-up.
Thank you, sir. Moving back to the organizational chart on page 6, I note you have 434 FTEs. Current FTEs are 398, so about 36 spots left to fill. For clarification, where are those spots? Where are the holes? Are you trying to fill those spots? Are you going to attempt to fill them? Or are you going to?
Our goal is to shrink government, so we hope to continue to decrease that number.
You're recognized for follow-up.
Thank you. What will the funds that have been appropriated to payroll for that function be utilized for?
We'll happy to give you updates as those guys come.
You're recognized for follow-up.
Thank you. For the existing deficiency in 434 and 398 and 36 spots, what are the funds for those 36 spots used for right now? Or are they just holding for something else? And if so, what?
We'll have to give you updates as those purchases come.
You're recognized for follow-up.
Do you have a plan for how those funds are going to be used?
We'll give the legislative the updates as we always do, as we spend agency funds in accordance with state law and state statutes. I will make note for everyone that our ESSER funds are running out, so that will account for obviously loss of programming and loss of some personnel, so that will account for some of this.
You're recognized for follow-up.
Thank you for that clarification. So the publicly stated intention to use payroll dollars to purchase the Bibles is no longer the intention, is that correct?
We've never stated that.
Additional questions or discussions on the Title I funding by Representative Lanstead? You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think one of the primary issues here, and I apologize for having my back to you. I think one of the primary issues here is, one, the preliminary notice and lack of preliminary notice for planning purposes. Two, once the notice did occur, then the actual amounts were canceled out of the system and then changed. We then just heard information about why that occurred and so forth. My question really has to do with what it takes to actually successfully run a school system, and from a management perspective, because I can understand, having been in business, that when you are looking at planning for coming months and looking at operations going forward, that you have to start planning earlier in advance. And so it would seem logical to me that it would be advisable to get some idea in advance what you think the federal funds are going to be, so that you can kind of start planning. And so I guess my question is, that doesn't seem unreasonable to me. So my question is, what is the problem that you see with providing school districts with a preliminary notice based on what you are getting from the federal education department? And given that you've got a system that you have articulated thoroughly vets the expenditures, and you certainly are to be commended by that, but what is the problem that you see with early communication of this notice, just for planning purposes for our school districts, so that they can, run the system that they need to run?
Is that for us, Representative Lanstead?
It's for whomever.
Yes. I have to answer
Answer the
that.
question.
Yeah, I have to answer that. So just to be clear, and again, we've seen a lot of misinformation floating around out there. So, when you see a district say they have no idea what their federal funding is, to be clear, every year, they have a whole harmless provision that they will receive no less than 85% of the federal funds they received the year before. This is communicated throughout the year, every year. This has been the case for years in the past. It's likely to be the case for years in the future. So districts know, and they are communicating to us regularly, they will have 85%. They will guarantee 85% of the federal funds they received the year before. Now, to get to an even finer point on your question, because I do think it's a good one. You're talking about management of a building and whatnot. are always going to ensure, to the best of our ability, that districts have an understanding of that exact amount accurately, because if we were to give out numbers too early and districts view that they have more money than they are going to get, that is a budgetary issue that we do not want to find schools in. Our system, again, they're able to know they will get at least 85%. We tell the districts faster than any of our surrounding states, except for Kansas, so they know it faster than any surrounding state, and they receive the money faster than any surrounding state other than Kansas. So again, this, narrative that's been perpetuated that somehow Oklahoma schools know little or less, the reality is we inform our schools faster and more accurately than any of the surrounding states. Again, I will concede Kansas, but again, that is a very important part of information, and if you would, just one comment on that. If we were to miscalculate the amount of kids in charter schools, underestimate that, we then would be having to send out notices to districts. We told you were gonna receive X amount of dollars, actually you're gonna receive significantly less than that, and that is something that we absolutely want to avoid.
You're recognized for Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that answer. Thank you. I will say, and I do have another question, but in response to that information, let me just say, and I do recognize that they were guaranteed that they would get no less than 85% of their money. But given the tightness with which our school systems are run today from a financial perspective, I mean, they are not flush with cash. And 15% of a federal allocation is not insignificant. And so while I do appreciate that, that assurance was there, I do think that there still is, and politics aside, I do still think that there is legitimate cause for worry when there is concern that they're not going to get what they expect. And so I do want to emphasize planning is important, early communication is critical, and an understanding of the tightness with which school districts have to operate needs to be taken into account. We are a team that is designed to serve the people, and we need to work together as a team. So may I ask another question?
Yes, you may. But for point of clarity, as you responded to Superintendent Walter's comments there, just so I'm understanding what I took a note on here during the comment period after the report on Title I fundings, is it my understanding that only 12 to 14% of public education funds are Title I, so we do have Avalon State funding as well, but I made a note, 12 to 14%, and that's for SB or Block, whoever can verify that number for me. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In our prior report, we noted that total federal
They want to do
funding
it
comprises
funding
across
so
the
they can
entire
discriminate
system,
against kids.
approximately 12 to 14%. So that would be more than just what the title funds represent.
Yeah, so they can discriminate against kids.
Can someone give me a breakdown of what Title I fundings represent?
It's the largest share, so Title I is 8% the largest share of title funds. Title funds is the current year is $300 million, and other federal funds are 228, sorry, 228 total. Other federal funds would be special education, if you brought you there.
Yeah, it's 181.
Okay, and we also, the child nutrition program last year, generated about $300 million.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. Person mindset. Thumbs on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to go back to the federal government and state. It was stated that the federal government notified the State Department you've made a mistake in the calculations. Can you tell me what they got the first number of anticipated funds when they notified you that they made a mistake, and can you give specifics around the nature of the mistake?
accommodating on the free lunch account because that tends to favor smaller rural districts, which we have primarily in Oklahoma. So one of the reasons we don't share the preliminary numbers is because we recalculate those figures using a different poverty measure, but also because the federal figures do not account for charter schools. They look only at the poverty rate within regular order school districts. And we have a great number of charter schools. We also have statewide virtual charter schools. And we have to calculate how much, based on the enrollment of kids in charter schools, where those children live. We have to calculate how much money to subtract from the federal allocation to the virtual order LEA to allocate them to charter schools. We also set aside 1% of the allocation for newly expanding charter schools. There's a rule, so if you're brand new or expanding charter schools, you can use current year poverty numbers rather than previous year. And we also set aside $16 million for the school improvement program. Those funds are allocated to LEAs, not just school districts, but it's all for the formula. So we don't share preliminary allocations because they are very inflated compared to what the school districts actually get, and they are not very useful for their purposes.
We address that telephone for budget purposes.
Okay, so we received the final allocations from the federal government at the end of June. That's what we base our allocations on. Calculate them using, it's an Excel spreadsheet that was developed in conjunction with the federal government. There are roughly 300,000 cells in that spreadsheet. And this year there was a broken formula, one, and it was not withholding the funds for the school improvement program or for the expanded charters. The figures without those withholdings are what were posted on August 16th. It wasn't the federal government that discovered that error. We discovered that error, and within 2 business days, and I think this is kind of miraculous, we found the cell with the broken formula. We corrected it. We scheduled a webinar, which I gave on August 20th. I believe some of you were present on that webinar, to explain the entire process and where we were. And the correct figures were loaded by August 21st into our grants management system.
Representative Lance, that's your recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for, Loft. I'm looking at page 13 in the draft, and in the second paragraph toward the bottom, specifically it says the later date of final allocations was a bigger problem than they realized. For districts, it was the delay of several months rather than a few weeks. I didn't understand that. Could you kind of break that down and explain what you meant by that?
Thank you for the question. Throughout this evaluation, we've heard feedback, not just from the survey. The survey did inform some perspective from superintendents, but remember, we were asked to do this report because of what members of the legislature were hearing from their own superintendents in their districts. And so what had been consistently communicated to both members and to us was that there was a delay in terms of when districts got that initial information from which to budget on. Understanding they're not final, but that was initially communicated. And when we had met with the Department of Education and asked them why do districts so firmly believe that they used to get this information, when SDE just as firmly believed that that information had not been previously provided, that's when we went ahead and contacted observed was the final allocations were delayed approximately a month. And so, from SDE's perspective, that wasn't that long of a delay. Districts, meanwhile, are saying, no, it's been months because we used to get this in the spring. And so that's where we sought to bridge the communication gap.
Like I said, you're recognized for follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then later in that paragraph, you say that the State Department of Education zeroed out title funding amounts without notifying districts and only communicated the error after the reduced amounts were invisible to the districts. What does that exactly mean? How did they zero out? Is it a system? I, not being in the system, I don't really understand the implications of that.
I will answer the question, and please, SDE, if you can elaborate on the mechanics of the system, please do. But our understanding from the feedback that we got from superintendents is they log into the system, they see balance. And when they log in, all of a sudden it was set to zero. And it hadn't received prior notification. So the error was justified, needed to be corrected, but the lack of advanced communication from SDE to let districts know, you're going to see your account go to zero, and here's why, and we're fixing it. That would have gone a long way, I think, in setting districts' minds at ease.
SDE, does somebody want to elaborate on the system or how that functions or operates?
Yeah, the other box is not on there. So on August 15th, we posted the calculated Title I allocations to our website. And then we loaded it into the grants management system, which is an online platform that school districts can access. We then discovered the error that the school improvement and the expanded charter funds have now been withheld. And we put a notice on our website saying, we discovered an error, these are subject to change. And then we began working on the changes. We withdrew them in EMS in order to load the corrected figures on the evening of the 20th. They showed up on the 21st. So someone who was logged into the system, the evening of August 20th would have seen the previously loaded numbers disappear and then the new figures show up. I'm not familiar enough to know if they have to refresh in order to see that, or if they have to see before their eyes, but that's the mechanism.
And the State Department of Education put on your website a notice on the 19th of the mistake, is that correct? Is that what I understood?
On the 16th.
On the 16th, that's the same day that you posted it for the funding?
Yes, we noticed the error right away and put a notice on the website saying that these figures are subject to change, because we knew that, we would have to change them in order to correct the error.
Representing Lancet, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. I guess my question would be, because I've worked at an agency, so I understand what it feels like and what it is to work in a system and try to run it. And I can imagine that if I'm a person responsible for the fiscal management of a system, and I'm looking at a system that shows funds that are going to be made available to a district, and I log in and I see one fund or one amount, and then I log in and see that zeroed out, going to zero, I would not immediately think to peruse an agency's primary website that is public facing to understand why a district allocation in a system would be zeroed out. And so can you understand, and this question is directed to the Department of Education, can you understand why notification via a website is not sufficient to allay panic on behalf of district employees who are in supervisors and administrators who are looking all of a sudden to see their accounts zeroed out.
Our goal at the time was to fix the problem that the federal government created, so we were rushing to fix that problem, and that was what we were able to do in record amount of time, so the districts could see the funds, and of course, the districts would know that that's not true, they're guaranteed 85% of their funds from the previous year. So we worked quickly to make that mistake and communicate it to districts.
Can I just add real quick to that? I feel like, some people forget that we receive phone calls constantly from districts. All of our staff across the agency is talking to these people and communicating. We'll have people, I unfortunately have to talk to someone from Barlow Consultants at church every Sunday about federal programs. So people are reaching out to us, constantly. So we have it on the website. Most of the people in federal programs have always been there. They have the same district contacts. And then when we do our new superintendent trainings and things like that, we give them information about who to contact, all of these things. So these districts and district staff are contacting us also, just to be clear about that.
And I also want to say, there was not a panic. There was not this freak out from districts. Again, I know you're asking about, who did they contact and whatnot. They get an email from us every week. They choose not to open the email update every week, that's on them. They have all of our numbers. Todd, how long have you been with this agency?
12.5 years.
12.5 years. They have RAOs that are working directly with the districts. And again, I showed you guys the numbers at the very beginning of this. 66% of districts don't respond to the survey. 82% have no issues. So when you're talking about 548 school districts, and again, we can go through my list of the issues we have with some districts that are bad actors. But our goal has been to communicate to the districts to make sure that these numbers are accurate, and that's what this team has continued to do.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you. So districts get this question from the State Department of Education, and reviewing the survey responses, actually, let me put it, this question is for WAFs. Were there school districts who expressed a concern in responding to this survey for fear of retribution?
Thank you for the question. We did have some districts cite that concern. We also had a school association group reach out and tell us that their members were not filling out the survey for that reason. We did try to assure them that the information provided would be de-identified. After that assurance, we did see an uptick in response.
Thank you for follow-up.
You were in that call.
This is for the State Department of Education. I personally signed up for multiple newsletters and summarily been disenrolled from said newsletters multiple times, so I'd like to understand the communication process as the expectation for superintendents, what the plan is moving forward, because it's overwhelming how many are suggesting they're not able to get someone on the phone that knows the answer. They're not receiving emails, they don't have a consistent pattern, the lack of communication is quite apparent throughout the report. What pivots is the agency prepared to make to improve communication so districts feel like they can talk to somebody?
This survey suggests that you just as incorrect. This survey suggests the overwhelming majority of districts, no issues communicating with the State Department of Education. Again, you can't make them read emails, you can't make them attend Zooms. When we have open Zooms for anyone who has a question to meet with our entire federal programs team, people choose not to attend when they choose not to call or ask questions. Our goal is to help provide clarity to them. And be crystal clear, our goal is to be accountable for taxpayer dollars. Can I tell you how many times I've heard that from the people of Oklahoma, that there's been a record investment in public education, but they want to know that their dollars are going where they're supposed to. That is what we are doing in the agency. That's what we continue to communicate. Again, all this backs up is that we have some bad actors who continue to point fingers at the agency, holding them accountable, instead of working with us to solve these issues. These claims, I will not apologize for putting extra steps in place to assure superintendents aren't building 4-bedroom condominiums with federal dollars. It's not gonna happen. We will again, we will continue to communicate with the legislature. We want the legislature to know everything that's being done. We want you all to know everything that's being communicated. We will continue to take suggestions from the legislature on how to do that. We appreciate the funding the legislature has given over to the public school system and our agency. Those taxpayer dollars are very, very important to us, and we believe it is of the utmost importance to protect them, and we will continue to do that.
For follow-up,
You're right.
final follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what I think I'm hearing is there's no plan to evolve your communication strategy so that the people you serve, the school districts you serve, do begin to report that they feel like they're being communicated with.
We serve the taxpayers of the state of Oklahoma. One of the roles of our agency is to hold districts accountable. I'm looking here at a survey that shows less than 2% of districts mention any kind of issue with their funding. That reaffirms that while we are holding districts accountable, we are also communicating expectations. We communicated the multi-tiered, I'm sorry, I messed it up, okay, I got it right. Multi-tiered review system, that was communicated to districts. We also communicated to them, it is on, the faster they submit claims is the faster they receive funds. We continue to see hundreds of districts beginning to submit claims to the agency, and that holds up their funding. So you look at these numbers, we always want to communicate with districts. We have, and again, we try to make ourselves available, phone, email, Zoom, so we will continue to do the things that we're doing and communicate with districts across the state.
Seeing no further questions or discussion on finding one out of funding.
He has been on his phone this entire meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask that you recognize JT
Jon Echols has been on his phone this entire meeting.
Of the review of pay raises for teachers at non-conforming schools.
Yes, you're right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Legislation passed in 2023 provided raises to all certified school staff, including to districts who are off formula, and they already pay above the minimum. SDE was required to fund these off formula districts. These funds were not provided to districts for over a year. $16.1 million was provided to the Board of Education in 2024 for off formula raises. The funds were distributed to districts on August 5th, 2024. In 2023, SB 1119 was enacted, increasing the minimum salary schedules for all teachers and certified personnel in the state. The raises ranged from $3,000 to $6,000, depending upon the number of years the teacher or certified staff member worked, as well as their degree level and certification. Because school districts will now be required to cover this raise for their employees, the legislature added an additional $500 million to the State Board of Education's normal appropriation, which was to go through the state aid funding formula for distribution to schools. Unlike previous legislative increases to the minimum salary schedule, the bill directed the State Board of Education to allocate funds for the teacher pay increase to school districts that do not receive the foundation or salary incentive aid component of the state aid funding formula. These are commonly referred to as off-formula districts. However, off-formula funding was not outlined in the spending limits bill passed in 2023, and so to cover the funding mandate, SDE initially withheld $15 million from the state aid formula. Oklahoma's public schools are largely funded through a formula designed to balance state support across districts by accounting for local revenue and the needs of students. There are three key components to determining the amount of state aid a school district might receive: foundation aid, salary incentive aid, and the transportation supplement. All districts are eligible for the transportation supplement. Some schools do not receive either of the other factors. These are known as fully off-formula districts. Other schools receive one of the two sources, but not both. These are known as partially off-formula schools. On November 9, 2023, the State Department of Education met with Senate staff to raise concerns about the legislation's directive. SDE sought guidance on how to distribute the funds. Among the concerns raised was the legislation's use of the word "or," whether the legislation included partially off-formula schools or only encompassed those that are fully off-formula. This distinction would double the number of districts receiving the funds, as well as the financial impact, from about $7 million to $15 million. In February of the next year, the Oklahoma State Board of Education approved a $6.8 million distribution to off-formula districts, using the money previously withheld from the formula. About a week after this vote, SDE was informed by House staff that funds could not be withheld from the state aid formula for this purpose. As a result, the $6.8 million was not distributed to districts, and the leftover $15 million was distributed to the funding formula for that year. In the 2024 session, SDE and the legislature agreed to provide funds directed for this purpose, and through the appropriations process, $16.1 million was given to the State Board of Education to fund the pay raises for off-formula staff. On August 5th, 2024, SDE dispersed the $16.1 million to the 87 schools that qualified for the funds. The legislation took effect in July, and SDE did not meet with members of legislative staff until November of the same year. Although SDE might have been well advised to seek an Attorney General opinion on the appropriate way to fund the pay raises to off-formula school districts in light of the differing legislative guidance, it appears that the agency had a plan to implement its initial understanding of the legislative intent, and that delays in providing the funds were not unreasonable considering the lack of clarity about how to fund the mandate. SDE sought a legislative remedy when it came to light that this plan was not within the legislative intent of the statute, and given that the legislature was already in session in 2024, a fix was achieved relatively quickly.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes our presentation of the section pertaining to all formula pay raises.
Thank you, Director. Superintendent Walters, do you have comments on the report on the off-formula pay raises?
Just a few comments. When we see new legislation, the way that we go about working with the legislature on this, we first try to go to determine legislative intent. We felt early on it was clear that we were to set aside funds similar to what we do for Lindsay and Home and many other programs. So we had a board meeting, set aside the funds, we're moving forward with that. Then a subsequent meeting, it was House Legal that flagged for us that they had concerns about the money being pulled back that way. We then began, as Loft noted here, kind of the layout there of our meetings. We began meeting with Senate and House leadership just to see, is there a remedy here? Do we agree or not agree on this? And it was clear that the Senate believed legally we could move forward. The House believed we couldn't. And so we were kind of at this spot where we wanted to ensure that, again, the pay raise had gone out, so all districts has implemented the pay raise, so that there was nothing stopping the pay raise, but how did the legislature intend for it to be reimbursed in districts? And we were happy to work with both House and Senate leadership, that I thought did a great job during session. Again, Locke, I think, did a good job laying out there, kind of, there's a distinction there in the language. Was the intent to fund the schools completely off the formula, or could they be off one of those indicators of the formula? Again, we were able to work with House and Senate leadership, and we appreciated clarity on that and approving this, so no teacher went without a pay raise. I think we got a lot of clarity, and we're able to come together with both chambers to make sure the legislative intent was followed here.
Thank you for that, and I'll just add a little bit. So going back 2 sessions ago, there was a lot of debate over education. Of course, we did increase the funding formula. Overall, we increased the education of over $700+ million. Different priorities within the chambers. House members expressed wanting to get an additional $500 million in the formula, and as noted, between often referred to off the formula, which is off the formula, which would not receive state funding on state aid. So a lot of those dynamics played out based on priorities of both House and Senate to increase education funding, but yet how to accomplish that by not withholding state aid to public K-12 schools. So I would say that yes, even last session, work was done to make jokingly, but sincerely, the intent was positive both House and Senate to make sure that we increased education funding. At that point, I will turn it over now and ask for questions from the members on pay raise off the floor. Leader Echols, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this may be for law. As I leave the legislature in 2.5 weeks, I'm not excited, this issue, I don't know that there'll ever be a 12-year period where we do as many teacher pay raises as we did during those 12 years. I mean, we've done more for teacher pay raise in education in the last 25 years combined. But a lot of those members in the House and the Senate that did that are leaving. This off the formula problem that the state superintendent brought up, the legislature brought up, the law brought up, this is always going to happen if we increase education funding. What happens is as you increase education funding, if you add a teacher pay raise, there are schools that have already done their budget because they're quote unquote off the formula. But for members to understand, they're off the formula because they have more per pupil expenditure than on formula schools. They have more money per student, but they've already budgeted that money. So there's two separate ways to do this, and I'll just let the whole public know this is what the debate is about. One way to do this is you fund it with cash for off-the-fund formula schools, so they have time, and then you say next year, because you have more money than everybody else, you have to make a plan. And we need a set of language that does that. We need teacher pay raise language that does exactly what I said. We fund it one time, and then they do it back. There's another belief structure that, which is what the Senate wanted at the time, is that you create kind of this separate form, and you continue to fund through this separate area off the funding schools, so you kind of increase that per pupil disparity there. We need a set of language that does that, because I hope the future legislators are going to continue on the teacher pay raise path that we put them on the increase of education funding that we put them on. But I think where the law could step in is say, if your intent is, we're going to cover it for a year, then you have to do it, here's your language. If your intent is, we're just going to create this separate funding formula, which is what it is. It's just this separate pot of money, and we're going to kind of fund it forever and increase that disparity. Well, I think that's bad policy. It's not my decision, but here's what it is. I think that's a function that Loft could fill in for us, and my request was, would you consider giving that to whoever my predecessor is? Because I'm sure I will be going before it's there to hopefully leave this place a little better than we found it.
Thank you for the question. We would be happy to fill the information gap for the new members coming in, to provide any detail that we can on this report and other reports that we've issued in the past. We're not bill drafters, but we're happy to support the conversation around the bill drafting.
Thank you for that very long-winded question, Mr. Reed. Very good. Representative Lanza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think for me,
And I do think on this particular issue, I'm sure SDE will elaborate, they did have an initial plan, and it wasn't until they learned that there was a disagreement about their plan did they seek further clarification.
Districts, I'm sorry, with the legislature, and we continue to work with the legislature due session and after session.
Any additional questions or discussions? Seeing none, Director Rose, you recognize. Moving on to attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd ask you to recognize Rebecca Hobbs for presentation of the paid maternity leave for teachers.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Legislation was passed in 2023 granting 6 weeks of paid maternity leave to qualifying full-time public school district employees. School districts were not reimbursed for maternity leave claims until October 2024. This evaluation reviews the public school paid maternity leave program and examines the factors that led to the delay in school districts being reimbursed. The maternity leave revolving fund began with $4.8 million. By the end of September 2024, SCE received 820 maternity leave claims for fiscal year 24, with a projected the revolving fund had $2,543,838 remaining in it, with $2.5 million of that balance reserved for use in fiscal year '25. SDE is using the agency's carryover funds to cover the difference between the amount of claims and the appropriated funds. 1 year after the maternity leave program was created, the legislature appropriated a total of $4.8 million into the public school paid maternity leave revolving fund via 2 different sections in Senate Bill 1125. In summary, the maternity leave program was created in 2023, and in the 2024 session, a total of $4.8 million was appropriated into the revolving fund, $2.3 million to pay all claims, and $2.5 million specifically directed for use in FY25. Maternity leave was placed under the authority of the State Department of Education Office of State Aid. The first communication from SDE to school districts providing guidance on the funds was on November 17, 2023. This email to all superintendents announced the paid maternity leave program and included a link to frequently asked questions about eligibility and the reimbursement process. This guidance announced that maternity leave was available to all eligible employees for fiscal year '24, with a deadline to submit reimbursement claims by December 31st, 2023. The agency cites several reasons for the more than year-long delay in reimbursing school districts for maternity leave claims. Number 1, the public school paid maternity leave revolving fund did not receive an appropriation until June 2024. Number 2, the reimbursement application needed revisions. Number 3, after the legislature appropriated funds with an effective date of July 1, the agency was not allowed to access those funds until OMES posted the agency budget on July 19th. Loft evaluated these reasons as follows. Section D of Senate Bill 1121 states that even if money is not appropriated to the dedicated revolving fund for paid maternity leave, the Board of Education shall allocate funds to fully fund maternity leave. Loft's reading of Section D is that it is in place to ensure that the maternity leave program continues to be implemented even in years when the legislature does not appropriate into the revolving fund or when the cost of claims exceed the level of funding appropriated. Statute tells SDE both to fully fund maternity leave and also where to find funds to do so, namely the, quote, funds appropriated for the support of public school activities. Public school activities are described in SB 36X, the spending limits bill for SDE. However, every dollar within this section is line item for a particular purpose. SDE states that the agency's legal counsel at the time advised that the legislature had to make an additional appropriation to the revolving fund before the State Board of Education would be allowed to transfer additional funds to the revolving fund. However, statute does not direct SDE to transfer funds to the revolving fund. It directs the agency to simply fund paid maternity leave. Between applications opening on November 17th and March 28th, 2024, SDE received 374 applications for reimbursement. During this time, the agency noticed a lack of consistency in district reporting. To correct this inconsistency, SDE notified school districts on March 28th, 2024, that the application was going to be revised and districts that had already submitted claims would need to submit again after the edited document was made available. According to SDE, the lack of consistency among district applications included inconsistency in how the district calculated the rate of pay for the employee taking maternity leave, lack of standard coding, or factoring in holidays and breaks that do not apply to that particular district. 3 months after SDE notified districts that the application would be revised, SDE legal counsel issued an internal memo on June 4th defining the daily rate of pay calculation and number of contract days calculation. Number of contract days was not to include holidays and breaks. Districts that were including holidays and breaks would be billing the state for days that the teacher would not have worked if she was not on maternity leave. Loft acknowledges the critical need for uniformity and accuracy in reimbursement applications. Without the corrections, SDE would have overpaid funds to school districts. SDE identified the need to revise the application in late March, and the new application was not available to districts until August 15th. While recognizing the justifications for revising the circumstances warranting a 5-month delay. SDE states that once the legislature appropriated funds into the maternity leave revolving fund in June 2024, SDE was not allowed immediate access to those funds due to the processes of the Office of Management and Enterprise Services. The process was completed by OMES on July 19th. While there was approximately 1 month between the date that funds were deposited into the revolving fund and the date that the budget was fully available for access, SDE did not begin reimbursements to schools for another 3 months. Therefore, the fact that there continued to be a delay after OMES posted the budget demonstrates that this was not a primary obstacle to reimbursing schools. SDE acted more aggressively in trying to fulfill the mandate to fund the off-formula teacher pay raises than it did with funding maternity leave, which presented similar legal questions about funding sources. With the issue of the off-formula pay raises, SDE demonstrated a willingness to withhold money from the funding formula to cover the cost of the mandate. Ultimately, however, the agency's determination that they could not transfer additional money into the revolving fund until the legislature made an initial appropriation precluded it from vigorously pursuing maternity leave reimbursements at an earlier time. Every other delay stemmed from this decision. Given that premise, the agency focused its actions around securing funds from the legislature. SDE is currently using the agency's carryover funds to cover the difference between the amount of claims and the appropriated funds, and expects to be able to pay all maternity claims through FY 25.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes our presentation on the section pertaining to maternity leave.
Thank you, Director. Superintendent Walters, response or comments on maternity leave?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I think that my comments would center around when the bill first passed, 2023, there was a large discussion. A lot of it was with the other chamber, with the Senate, on how much of a cost is maternity leave to districts? Is it a cost? What are we covering? What is it going to be? And so those conversations continue. Frankly, I was in hearings, budget hearings, where we openly discussed this. Are we paying for the sub? Are we paying in lieu of days? What are we paying for? And it was very unclear at the time what that would look like. But in the language here, that first year we were to allocate funds from SB 36X, which again, those were all line items, so there wasn't additional funds there for it. And as we went into last legislative session, there was much more clarity on what the expectation is on a reimbursement model in the legislation that passed. And we were able to move that forward. As you saw, there was confusion from districts in their application. We saw applications coming in that obviously were very inconsistent, right? You're seeing districts would claim a lot more money for one teacher than another, when those should be much closer. And again, I think it was a new process for districts. It wasn't something that they'd done in the past, and so that's why we changed the application to be much more clear. So the districts, basically the way they put it in, I'm happy to have our team respond to this later, but the way they put it in is very similar to some of the other programs, and we thought that would eliminate, again, any kind of delay or us going back and forth with districts. But so that was the reason for the change. And again, to be very upfront, I think that districts are very engaged with this program. It's been one that's grown quite a bit. This was the first year that the monies went out for it, and it's one I think that you're seeing districts utilize to promote teacher recruitment. So I think it's a popular program now, and I anticipate we're going to be having a lot of conversations about what will the numbers be like in the future. We've had these conversations with several members of the House currently on the budget committee of, we're trying to do projections. It is hard to project, what maternity leave cost will be for districts next year. But again, we're working to give the legislature our best numbers on that. But again, we think this has been a successful program.
Open the members for questions, discussion. Representative Brazon, you're right.
Thank you. My question is from the A14, appendix 14, in the back of the report. The second paragraph down, it says, maternity leave disbursement has not been received. This is from the survey, and little to no guidance has been provided by the SDE. They're wanting us to code the expenditure into last year's OCAS, which we have already submitted and certified. we get dinged for opening up our OCAS data once certified, it could be a risk to deficiency. Can you assure school districts moving forward that being asked to open up certified reports will not result in a risk to deficiency?
I'm trying to follow the question. You're asking if they open up their previous OCAS reports, if that would lead to a deficiency?
Yes.
It would depend on the individual circumstance there.
You recognize for follow-up?
Thank you. In this particular situation, the school district was directed to do it, but not apparently assured that they would not risk accreditation deficiencies.
Is anybody aware of how that would be an issue here? That seems very.
That would be in financial accounting, but financial accounting is also aware of our situation with the 2024. So I can't imagine that there would be any kind of drawback to the district for that purpose. And the 2025 applications we're collecting now as well, and those will get out in plenty of time to meet their deadline going forward.
Thank you for follow-up.
You recognize for
So just
follow-up?
for final yes or no, and so districts who are directed to go back by the State Department of Education and amend reports will not be held responsible through the accreditation process for the directions that they're supposed to do.
All I can say is I will talk to financial accounting, the director, and make sure that that is addressed, but I can't see that there would be a problem with that, since we didn't get funding until the 2025 fiscal year, as far as being able to dispense.
And to be clear, you're saying the school district was directed to amend a report based on maternal leave and funding, not on any other issue? Correct, okay.
And Chairman, I wouldn't see any kind of issue there. Again, we deal with, if there's anything we're working on the district with to solve the problem, that doesn't, we don't turn around and ding them for trying to help solve an issue, especially with these new programs. This is a very open line of communication with districts, so, no.
Very good. Additional questions, discussions, Attorney Lee? Seeing none. Director Burke, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, the report, school resource officer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask to recognize J.T. once again for presentation of the funds for school resource officers.
No, sir, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 2023, school districts were provided guidance by SDE that funds appropriated by the legislature for school security could roll over during the 3-year period. That guidance was reversed by SDE, and districts were unable to access their expected funds. After the release of the Attorney General opinion, SDE distributed $99 million of the total $150 million to districts, covering both the rollover from the previous year and the full amount for fiscal year 25. During the 2023 legislative session, 2 bills were enacted to establish a new revolving fund and appropriate $150 million to it. This fund, managed by
Yes, sir, Chairman, thank you. I want to be clear, and I appreciate law including this in the report. Inhalers were always available for districts on a reimbursement model. We communicated that, and as law pointed out repeatedly to districts. The question here was, could we sole source to a foundation? I also appreciate that law laid out many attempts from our team to say, we have a legislator asking us to do so. Can we do it? Can we walk through the legal paths? Our legal team saw maybe roadblocks there, and so did OMES. And so ultimately, that's where we landed on trying to find the best ways to continue reimbursing districts of the inhalers. And Locke mentioned, we could have given more guidance to the legislature on it. And I would just tell you, we really did not hear members of the legislature or districts asking about this issue. And I think, Locke pointed this out, 1,400 school sites have inhalers on a regular basis, and I think that's we're looking at a situation where there just wasn't a problem. They were getting inhalers, they were being reimbursed for inhalers, and so the question was, you know, this in particular contract, could it be awarded in this manner? And again, we take the state laws very seriously, especially when it comes to sole sourcing. And after examination through multiple legal avenues, we didn't see a path forward in order to do that. And so, you know, I want to reiterate, we've been making inhalers available to districts. You know, a lot of districts have taken us up on that, 1,400 school sites doing that. And again, something that we find very important. Chairman asked me about the legislation requested. Again, we're happy to work with you all, and that's a standing invitation, not today or just this week, of course, anytime.
Still the same kind of FTEs from their side, I guess I would touch on that, Superintendent Walters, if you are going to run the efficiencies and less FTEs, will you be making the adjustments to that budget request?
What we continue to do is find how to utilize current staff to continue to implement the programs that we have. So for instance, when you apply for federal programs, our goal of our agency is not to staff up, it is to get those programs directly to districts. We have a record $60 million literacy grant. We just got awarded another $9 million grant, and again, the previous administration would staff up to help oversee those roles. What we foresee is being able to try to utilize as much staff as currently there, and so that's what we're going to continue to do. And we're happy, Mr. Chairman, to continue through the budget process to provide. We've been meeting with members on the budget committee to continue to walk through and answer any questions. We're happy to go through those because I do think it's important as we continue the conversation for you all to have the full picture of what federal funds are coming in, how are those being utilized. Those play a major role in this as well. And again, with us receiving the second largest literacy grant in the country, that's a big one for us, and we're trying to manage where staff can go when that grant comes into play. So we're happy to continue those conversations, and those all play a role in that budget request as well.
Hear that, and then Representative Ramazan, you stated that the agency recommendations basically stated to you agency roles, direction that should already be in place. That's the first thing I heard. I thought you were going with that. You want to follow up on that or be very specific?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I would be curious if the state agency will be implementing the recommendations by Loft as a part of their routine job description.
Well, we're currently reviewing the recommendations from Loft.
Additional questions, discussion? Representative Lancet, and then we have Echols coming out next. Representative Lancet, your recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, as you have been made aware, and one thing I do want to reiterate for those that are here and listening, the scope, the way Loft historically has operated is that there is a work plan that is drafted. The work plan is submitted to the Legislative Oversight Committee, and then collectively, the work plan is voted on and or approved or altered by the entire committee. This particular Loft report was not pursued in that manner. So just for edification purposes, the work plan for this report was very specifically drawn up by individuals that were in leadership capacity on the House side, but it did not involve the Legislative Oversight Committee and was not submitted to us for approval in advance. Having said that, what I would like to do today, and I have submitted a letter to your office accordingly a week ago, is ask for an expansion of the Loft report and an expansion of items in the work plan for Loft to address. And there are 3 areas that I would like to add to the work plan for consideration. I understand that we
I
do not
notice it.
have a quorum today because the Senate is not here, and that we can take no official action. But I would like this request to be put forth in, the record.
Piece of shit.
We will have it noted. I did receive your email, there was a response back since what was brought up. A response back. I did state that I believe that would be something for the 60th legislature to take up. I will not be returning, I will not be the chair, neither is the Senate co-chair returning. So there will be new chairs appointed by both the speaker-elect and the pro tem-elect. The structure of this committee will change significantly. There's 4 members of the Senate not returning, a couple of members of the House. Leader Echols is one that will not be returning as well.
Trying to escape accountability.
A bride, there's 3, I haven't went through the full list, but whenever I was putting together the potential of trying to encourage the Senate, I did go through the Senate list in detail. There's 4 members not returning in the Senate, and I did look at the House closely, but, so with that makeup of the committee changing, I think it should be best brought up with the new leadership, both elect pro tem, elect speaker, new appointees to this committee, and then, we will make note and record that you have requested 3 items to be added for, potential work plan for SDE.
Bigots and
for
bullies.
the 60th legislature and the law committee to look at. Thank you for that recommendation. Leader Echols, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. 2 very quick questions. One for law. When I'm looking at these, I feel like we're burying the lead a little bit. The argument against prepayment is not statutory, but that's constitutional. So as far as whether or not prepayment could occur, constitutionally that can't happen, right?
I believe, thank you for the question. I believe both entities did cite statute, and that statute is based on a constitutional provision. That's correct.
Thank you. So, and my final follow-up, I'm gonna take us all the way back because I had notes and I thought somebody was gonna ask it, so, Superintendent, it's about something that you had said earlier, so I'm not trying to give you time to think about it, but there was a couple talk about a quadplex that somebody tried to use federal funds on. I just like my final question in the legislature being about maybe wasting taxpayer dollars. I don't know how much of that is public or what you can tell us, but that is a little shocking to me. Could you expand on that just a little? I mean, we're at a loft committee. I carried the bill on the floor that created loft. The purpose of loft was to look out taxpayer dollars. I carried it actually the year before.
He didn't want to talk about maps.
Which is a much cooler name. But nobody knows what loft means. But could you tell us a little bit about what happened there? That's kind of a shocking statement.
I will say a little bit more, and then I would like to say we're happy to give you, I have a list here, I'm happy to pick from it, happy to give you the full list. And just to be clear, and this is part of the process that we put in place, when we get a claim like that, the claim isn't, hey, I've got a fourplex out back, I'm gonna use money for it. The claim comes in that there's gonna be renovation, right? And renovation, it's not documented very well. So then as our team dug in through the process, that's when we were able to uncover that the superintendent actually owned that fourplex. So I do want to be clear, they don't just submit these to you and say, hey, I'm building something out back, or renovating out back. They submit it, and then through our system of checks and balances, that again, I feel very strongly about ensuring that these claims don't go through. As you know, we have a district we're having to pull back $500,000 of federal funds for because of claims that they submitted. So right here, what we found is we found an instance where upon the process that we put in place, we were able to find that superintendent actually owned that, we were able to reject it.
Somebody's
And
filming this
the
whole
floor,
meeting.
I'd be happy to provide you the list of some of the more egregious ones that we found to help inform them.
Representative Palmer, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for clarification. You did your job. So what our title funds is supposed to be used for? I'm glad you presented it because a lot of things get denied, but what is appropriate expenditure, like reading specialists, materials? By and large, most school districts, I would apply appropriately. So I really love to refrain from paying a target on the backs of
superintendents and on the backs of schools in this moment when we're about to be done. What do most school districts use those funds for?
Yeah, there's several Title programs, and each one targets, different specific aspects, but since we're talking about Title I, that's one of the more broad ones. Most districts will use those for personnel, for reading specialists, like you mentioned, for, helping reading specialists, that sort of thing. Occasionally to buy supplemental curriculum materials or subscription to online supplementary materials to help the students who are falling behind or students the most disadvantaged. Those are the most common expenses.
Oversight committee and was not submitted to us for approval in advance. Having said that, what I would like to do today, and I have submitted a letter to your office accordingly a week ago, is ask for an expansion of the loft report and an expansion of items in the work plan for loft to address. And there are 3 areas that I would like to add to the work plan for consideration. I understand that we do not have a quorum today because the Senate is not here, and that we can take no official action, but I would like this request to be put forth in the record.
Piece of shit.
We will have it noted. I did receive your email, what's your response back, since what was brought up. Have response back.
Oversight committee and was not submitted to us for approval in advance. Having said that, what I would like to do today, and I have submitted a letter to your office accordingly a week ago, is ask for an expansion of the loft report and an expansion of items in the work plan for loft to address. And there are 3 areas that I would like to add to the work plan for consideration. I understand that we do not have a quorum today because the Senate is not here, and that we can take no official action, but I would like this request to be put forth in the record.
Piece of shit.
We will have it noted.
Those do very directly relate to the use of significant amounts of taxpayer dollars within the department. So just a clarification for those items so that everyone is clear that it's not on policy or, programs or whatever. It specifically has to do with use of taxpayer money. Those 3 items. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions? I've got one that, it does deal with the grants you mentioned, the big one for reading sufficiency coming up. With the grant programs that we receive or the award on the federal, on most of those aren't, administration or could FTEs be paid for out of the federal grants themselves if you're awarded those for clarification?
Sure, and that's part of what, when you're looking at the overall budget, some of these conversations that we've had, depending on where federal dollars come in, again, when we get awarded a literacy grant, that changes our ask to the legislature. I've always made the commitment to you that, first we'll see grants that are available before we come to the state legislature and say we'd like more funds here or there. If we can find something, especially a 5-year plus grant, that helps us not come before the legislature with that specific budget ask. So I just add those things in as this is a broader part of kind of what's going on in the agency. And so as we continue through the budget hearings in the future, we want to make sure that we're laying out kind of the full vision of both why we're making a request, but also what we are doing in kind of the other buckets in the agency through federal funding, so that it paints a broader picture of why we're asking what we're asking for.
Thank you. Representative Osborne, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On a completely different note, this is probably the last public, if 2025 overall official meeting that you will be conducting and that Representative Echols and Representative Bride will be a part of. I just wanted to publicly thank you all for your service. Thank you very much for being
And
involved.
Rick does.
I would also like to add Representative Button, I wrote you earlier.
And Representative Bowman. Sorry.
Named in charges. Named in charges.
Representative Osborne, still in my thunder. I would like to publicly acknowledge as well, last year you served as your vice chair, in this capacity, and Mark Rose, you, couldn't have done without you, and absolutely, the state of Oklahoma is gonna miss you, and the work that you've done.
Echols is really gross.
Long-term legacy impact that you had on this appropriations process, and the level of transparency, that the state now has because of your leadership and Leader Echols. But thank y'all both, thank all of y'all, outgoing members, you'll be sorely missed, and the state of Oklahoma, but it will miss you as well. Thank you.
No, we won't.
Thank you all of you for kind words and comments. It has been an honor to serve. I want to make sure that I do thank Bob and SPs and the Walters for coming in. I do want to add, I know that the comment was made that, you know, a waste of time here today. I do think good information came out of the presentation today. I think probably more informed, better educated. I always like to be educated myself. Transparency is always good. So yes, we did take up some time today in preparation that went into it. I want to commend Bob, the director. I've had some communications with her. I know that they did quality work on this. They pulled everybody together, pulled off the other projects to make this happen. I'll let you comment here in just a moment, but Senate Bill 1 created law, great work that's been done here leading into this for the future of the state, the other legislatures coming in, and agencies, programs, a great asset for the state to have. Great work. I appreciate everyone here with SDE, the agency, for coming in, the time that you've given up this morning, and the weeks before this. I know I made the request August 16th for this to happen. Other members in the room, Representative McBride.
Don't talk about everything. Don't talk about Mary Vaughn.
Actions to be taken. I heard that
Don't talk
as
about
well.
Max.
I had constituents calling, and so therefore.
Don't talk about federal funding that they want to dismantle.
I had lengthy discussions with Speaker McCall. I was in communications with the Senate before I did that, just so the public knows. Offered the Senate to come in, President Treat said that he would not sign on or authorize. He would call back on the very same day he had his press release stating that he would not participate with the Senate, that he would basically authorize. So it was not the same uniform that we usually have with the law committee taking up a work plan, approving it. It was approved by both the speaker and the pro tem, which is who has the ultimate control over this committee based on the committee member appointments and the retainment of the director. So that being said, I just want to lay that groundwork out there, but I do appreciate everybody's time, effort, your desire for transparency, protecting taxpayer and federal, state monies is very important to me as well, always has been, and I want to thank you for the work you've done, both law and the agency. Any other closing comments, Director, Superintendent? We'll start with the Director. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your service. We appreciated serving in this capacity, support the legislature's work in holding agencies accountable and making sure that not just the information, but the fiscal transparency is there. We learned a lot from this, as we always do when we look at an agency. There were 5 areas of funding that we dove into. We are happy to make ourselves available to any members of this committee or the legislature at large to go over any of this in more detail. But I would like to commend the office who, as Chairman Wallace said, we did have to set aside all of our other work to prioritize this project, but it deserved prioritization based off of what was in the public domain at the time. And so, thank you for...
Jon Echols needs to explain why my son doesn't have restroom access. Why I was arrested.
Chairman, I appreciate your time. Thank you for
And why
today.
they all sit
I will say we are dedicated to holding school districts accountable. We are dedicated to making Oklahoma the best state in the country for education. Our team will continue to work tirelessly for the parents of the state of Oklahoma and the students for the state of Oklahoma. And we will continue to make sure every hardworking taxpayer in the state of Oklahoma, their funds are being directed in the ways that they were intended to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate everyone being here today and in attendance. Those who are tuning in online as well. Once again, thank you very much. It's been an honor to serve. No other business before us. Meeting's adjourned.
I want you to tell me why my son doesn't have temporary accommodations at the Oklahoma State Department of Education and why you sat silent while I was arrested.
I wasn't there, but Audra, I want you to tell me why I offered you, you're excited that you're getting a change in the board meeting, in the building codes. I offered you that the first year that you ran and you said no. This could have been fixed 6 years ago. We were standing outside my office.
John.
Audra, you said
no. He arrested me, and they're telling me no.
Audra, I know why you don't want to talk about.
Job.
I know why you don't want to talk about what
about
happened. I asked you a fair question, Audra.
Ask me the question again.
I told you when we were in a budget crisis that I would pass your bill off the floor, which, by the way, I've passed your bill off the floor every time it was in my office.
Why are armed Oklahoma Highway patrolmen still directing me to the floor?
Audra,
while I held the governor's appointment,
Audra,
John?
I give you a second.
You're named in charges.
Audra, give me a second. See, I know you don't want to talk about it.
Hey, can you tell me why you didn't run Max's law? Can you tell me why you voted no against that bill?
She doesn't want to hear it. She walked away when she got asked questions about what really happened. She's too busy lying.
You're a narcissist. You're
lying,
gross.
Audra. You're lying.
You are so. Why did you quit the bill?
I don't talk mean about you.
Why are you letting armed Oklahoma Highway? Why doesn't Max have Oklahoma? Why doesn't Max have access over there?
Because you chose
nothing to do with me. No, an ADA grievance is different than a bill, John.
I offered to.
You're a bigot and a bully trying to defund our federal dollars.
Audra, you're the bully.
No,
you bully
you
everyone,
are.
and you don't tell the truth.
Hey,
but I feel for
why
you.
did you not? Why doesn't Max have restroom access?
It's because you don't want help.
Why are you sitting silent? Those are federal rights violations. And you said, I had a governor's appointment. You never talked to me. I was a volunteer for this state. Y'all are so gross. And you don't want to talk about it?
Sorry.
Yeah. It's awful. Horrible reporting. You're named in charges.
I'm sorry.
You're named in charges, Jeff.
Yes.
So are you. You're named in charges.
Well, I'm not worried about it because I passed it every time I could.
There's government accountability,
I passed it every time I could, Audrey. You've
No,
decided
you
not to
didn't.
do this.
No.
Every
You
time it came through.
You ignored federal
Audra-
rights violations.
Audra,
You
you've
ignored
made
an
this about
ADA
you, and
grievance.
it's
It
sad.
is about me. I'm being directed to the floor
Made
by
it-
an armed
it-
Oklahoma
no, it's
Highway
not. It's about
patrolman.
Oklahomans. It's about Oklahomans.
It is
It's about
personal.
Oklahomans.
You are such a dick. Can you please tell me why you're sitting silent as Max is bullied? Federal rights violations? Can you tell me why you sit silent?
I'm not sitting silent, Audra. I'm at a loft committee investigation.
You have sat silent for 6 years as state employees discriminate against me.
I'm so sorry that you visit with an attorney. I'm not. The people are watching everything.
You're willfully neglecting your duty and abusing your power. You could talk to him. Can you tell me why Max doesn't have restroom access at the Oklahoma State Department of Education? And why your constituents have filed complaints? Can you ignore that? Why state employees are still directing me to the floor in the bathroom? Mark?
We're having a conversation here. Thank you.
Willful neglect of duty, abuse of power, retaliation, collusion.
Okay. On the ballot.
You have willfully neglected your duty. As your own constituents are named as your own constituents, Mark. You're gross. Oklahomans will not miss you.
Oh, I know.
Can you tell me why you had me arrested and why you're denying my son his federal rights at the Oklahoma State Department of Education? Can you?
Good to see you. I appreciate it.
Can you tell all these people?
Appreciate you.
Can you tell these people why you had me arrested? Willful
Thank
neglect
you
of
for being
duty,
here.
abuse of power, retaliation, collusion in government.
God bless you. God bless you. Thank you. God bless you.
Don't touch me. Do not touch me.
So much. It's an honor.
That's what a whole bunch of bigots and bullies look like.